I'll call this meeting to order. It's the meeting of the Transportation Public Works Committee. This is a rescheduled meeting to accommodate Veterans Day, November 10th, 2014. I'm Councilmember Reich. I'll be chairing the committee. I'm joined by Council Members Yang, Glidden, Palmisano, and Councilmember Gordon is on his way. We have several consent items. I will go through them before we go into the public hearings. Any committee member can pull a consent item as they wish. Item 3, the first item on consent, is the Special Service District Advisory Board appointments. Approving the following council appointments and reappointments to the Special Service District Advisory Boards for 2-year terms to expire June 30th, 2016. And the people and specific districts are listed. Item 4 is the Special Service District Consulting Services, authorizing a negotiation execution of professional service agreement with Urban Works Incorporated for Special Service District Consulting Services for 2015 with up to 4 additional 1-year extensions if work deemed necessary in the amount not to exceed $150,000 annually. No additional appropriation required. Item 5 is approving the levy of the 2014 special assessments upon the benefited properties, adopting the assessment rolls, and directing transmittal of the assessment rolls to the Hennepin County Auditor for collection to begin on 2015 real estate statements. Item 6 is the authorizing execution of amendment of the Convention Center Hotel parking ramp lease contract, renewing the lease for an additional 10 years, effective April 1st, 2014, and setting the garage keeper's legal liability insurance limits to $10 million. That will be referred to CD and Ways and Means committees. Item 7 is a couple low bids, accepting low bid of PCI Roads LLC for an estimated expenditure of $605,050 to furnish pavement profiling and roto-milling services, and accepting single bid of Cellular Concrete Incorporated for an estimated annual expenditure of $73,200 to furnish and deliver cellular concrete to the Surface Water and Sewer Division. That item we referred to Ways and Means. The following items we referred to City Council or referred by City Council. Item 8 is setting the public hearing for November 18th, 2014 to consider the subject matter of an ordinance amending Title 17, Chapter 430 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances relating to streets and sidewalks, right-of-way permits, setting out specific permit requirements for dumpsters and storage containers obstructing the public right-of-way. And the final consent item is setting a public hearing for November 18th, 2014 to consider the subject matter of amending Title 5, Chapter 91 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances to building code permit fees, clarifying in connection with amendments to the right-of-way chapter that street use permits referred to the building code are a form of obstruction permit. Those are the 9 items. Committee members wish to pull any? Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have some questions on item number 4.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Sure. With regards to this contract, I'm wondering, I'm reading what the RFP and the intended goals of the RFP were, and it says here in the RCA that the intended goal of the RFP was to retain consulting services to develop and implement process improvements for the city special services districts and provide consulting services related to the authorization, formation, and operation of new and existing districts. And I'm wondering if somebody can explain to me what the actual benefit is, or what are we intending to get out of this, much more than just kind of, what this says here.
Certainly.
And, my second question is just, related to that, who gets to use it? We have all these special services districts. Does everyone get to use it, or is it just through Public Works?
I'll refer that question to Director Kaki.
Mr. Chair, I'll have Mike Kennedy, our Director of Transportation Maintenance Repair, answer this question.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Councilmember Yang. The purpose of this contract is to retain the consulting services for Public Works. We're up to 15 special service districts now, and we've embarked on a number of initiatives over the past few years. Some are still ongoing. We have some legislative amendments that we want to pursue. We have still have a city managed policy that we want to create. We have ongoing work going on constantly. We had been doing some, had some standard agreements the last couple of years, and we just need some internal consulting help. For right now, we only have one person, Andy Carlson, who has to manage all of these special service districts. We want to use Mr. Carlson in order to do the day-to-day work of maintaining these things. We have 30-some contracts to manage. We've just got a ton of work to do. And we want to use the consulting services to sort of do some of the trailblazing work and that sort of stuff. This is designed for public works use. And we have the $150,000 amount. We actually anticipate doing about $100,000 per year. We have a 1-year contract with the option to extend 4 additional years. We'll see how this works and move from there.
Okay, and follow up with that. So let's say, the West Broadway Special Services District, I mean, if they needed some help, let's say, with something, I mean, the consulting services here is not for them, it's for Public Works, is that correct?
That's correct. It is not for them to access. That's correct, not for the service districts.
Thank you.
But to extend on that thought, by having the consultant do that work, Mr. Carlson is more available to help those folks on West Broadway as called upon. Any other questions? Seeing none, then I will move all consent items. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. Thank you very much. We now have our public hearings. We've been joined by Councilmember Gordon. Item 1 is the non-governmental tax-exempt parcel streetlight operation fee assessment.
Mr. Chair, Brett Jelly, our Director of Business Administration, will actually present both the public hearing items.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Brett Jelly. I'm the Director of Business Administration for the Public Works Department. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on the proposed non-governmental tax-exempt property street maintenance and street lighting assessments. And as I've done in the past, while there's technically 2 public hearings, one for the street lighting and one for the street maintenance, they're very similar and have similar impacts on property. So I'll give a overview presentation and then allow you to go into the public hearings. Minneapolis has been assessing non-governmental tax-exempt parcels for street lighting and street maintenance operations since 1974. In 2009, the department made recommendations and the City Council approved updates to those assessments. The updates to the assessments included changing from a front footage to an influence area method to determine the assessable area. We updated the assessment rates to reflect the current costs of street maintenance and street lighting, and we also updated the list of eligible parcels. Through that process, we started coming here every year to, we go through the property list, identify properties that had changes, and giving them notice of public hearings. So today's public hearing is for payable 2015 assessments. It uses the same rate as last year. So the public hearing notices were only sent to properties that are either being assessed for the first time or had an increase in their assessment due to property boundary changes. This year, there are 1,365 eligible properties. Notices were mailed to 231 properties for the street maintenance assessment and 191 for the street lighting assessment. That is up from previous years. We've generally been averaging about 60 a year, but Hennepin County is going through a conversion process with their GIS system and property boundaries, which has resulted in really minor tweaks to many properties, but if the results in the assessment going up, we give notice to those properties. For the street maintenance payable 2015, the median or middle value assessment for these properties is $190 a year. The mean or average assessment is $410. The total payable 2015 assessments is $559,465. For the street lighting, the middle value or median is $38 a year, and the mean or average is $82 a year, and the total payable for 2015 is $112,073. I would like to note, we did get an objection letter from an attorney representing 2644 Minnehaha Avenue. We've done some research on that, and I spoke with their attorney this morning. It seems possible that there was some, the property went from tax exempt to taxable while we were updating our list, and if we're able to confirm that it actually will be paying property taxes next year, we'll just be removing it. We'll bring a recommendation to remove that from the assessment roll. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for staff for the presentation? Seeing none, I will then open the public hearing. This is a public hearing regarding the tax-exempt parcel streetlight operations as described in the presentation. Did anyone sign in? No one is signed in with the clerk. Does anyone wish to come forward? Does anyone wish to come forward? Seeing no one coming forward, I will close the public hearing and move the item as described by staff. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting, that carries. We'll move to the second public hearing, and this is also regarding tax-exempt parcel street maintenance assessment. And I believe it's also Mr. Jelly who will present.
Mr. Chair, my presentation would be the same as what I just gave you, so
Okay.
There's no questions.
No questions for this part of it? Seeing none, I will move the item as described in our packet here. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. So both those items have been carried, and we now will go into our receive and file, which I believe will have a presentation. That's item number 10 regarding the Sustainable Water Utility Management Award. Director Kaki.
Mr. Chair, actually on this is receive and file really just to recognize our water treatment and distribution division on an award that they've received recently. This is an award associated with the organization. Really, it's kind of a management award. It also has a lot to do with the employees within the water treatment distribution, but it's really, I think, also reflective of the great management work that the organization has done. And we just wanted this as the opportunity to explain a bit about the award itself. And I'd be happy to walk through that if you'd like, or if you would want to walk through it, it's your choice.
Yeah, I can just maybe cover some highlights that I have before us, unless you wanted to add to that general presentation. Yeah, I believe some of the highlights, as I did describe this actually when we received the award in full council, but for the benefit of this committee in this forum, it recognizes the triple bottom line that was achieved, a balance between economic, social, environmental endeavors, and several things were very specifically called out for Minneapolis's excellence in this. The robust capital improvement plan that we have, the implementation of a fixed rate component in the rate structure, support of urban farming and community gardens was highlighted, collaboration on source water protection, promotion of the value and quality of tap water, and efforts in reducing the use of disposable plastics, plastic bottles, all were very much highlighted in addition to the things that Mr. Kotke or Director Kotke covered. The award specifically recognizes the performance where management vision coupled with employee commitment created a sustainable water utility that supplies the ample supply of safe, clean drinking water daily to over 500,000 people. So it was a very significant award, and the specific things that were called out that were unique to Minneapolis that were highlighted, I think were very impressive, and I think we can all be proud of this service, and certainly something that we've been bragging about for some time is our water quality, and it looks like other people are recognizing how we get there to that good end product. So if there's nothing else to add, Director Kotke?
Only maybe just the specific. So the award itself was referred to as a Sustainable Water Utility Management Award, and it was awarded to us from the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies.
Very good. If there are no questions, then I will move to receive and file this significant award to our water division. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. Congratulations. Now we'll move into our discussion items, item 11 being the first one that regards the municipal parking system management RFP.
Mr. Chair, John Werchus, our Director of Traffic and Parking Services, will make this presentation. We thought this would be good, just especially with some of our newer council members, as we go out with an RFP to understand kind of the breadth of our parking system and how we contract out for those services.
Thank you very much.
Morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. John Orchis, Director of Traffic and Parking Services. Want to maybe start our effort today regarding item 11 and with a little bit of background, and then it'll get into some of the details related to the RFP specifically in that regards. First of all, we've got a website out on the city's system. We call ourselves MPLS Parking. That's our marketing brand, and wanted to kind of highlight that and let the community know, as well as others, that that's out there for their use to better understand our parking system. On a very high level, we have three components of our system, parking system. The first is the impound lot. I'm not going to get into any details on that, but you can kind of understand the components of where we impound vehicles. Our second area is our off-street parking facilities. We have approximately 7,500 parking spaces, metered parking spaces out there, both in a pay station as well as a single head meter devices on the street. And the third component is our off-street system, made up primarily of parking in and around downtown. In that regards, you can see we have 25 facilities with approximately 20-some thousand parking spaces. In addition to those parking spaces, we also have connected and other services provided with it, one being the Skyways, which directly link to these facilities, but also other elements such as the bike locker stations and signs that we have out in the system that make the parking and traffic components work well together. With that kind of general overview of our three components, I thought I would turn to the RFP that we issue. A little bit of history maybe to start off. We have been in the off-street parking facility business since about the mid-70s. We built our first ramp, just kitty-cornered here, the Government Center ramp, in 1974. And with that, we have been contracting with an outside vendor since that time in order to operate our system and provide the daily operations and efforts that we have. You can see on the screen here that contract is primarily made up of three components, one being the operations and customer service components, really revolving around the revenue control, but also the maintenance components, and I'll get into a little bit of highlights of those a little bit more. And then there's also the janitorial contract and the security contract. So those are the three big areas of the system. Staffing-wise, as part of the operations and efforts, we've primarily got most of our system is all automated. However, there are a couple locations where we have cashiers still, primarily because of the types of services that we provide at those facilities. In addition to that, we've also got customer windows in our facilities where we provide other types of services for our customers. We also do the meter collection, so the collection from the pay stations and from the meters out in the street is done by this contract, as well as I mentioned before, the administrative staff and the revenue control component of the system. On the maintenance side, you can see some general highlights here of the various elements that are maintained. This is not capital replacement and rebuilding. This is maintenance. Changing of the light bulbs is an easy one. In that regards, making sure that our system is running safely, handling issues that come up, and then with staff deciding how to best proceed. On the janitorial side, we take care of the Skyways, the various office and public spaces throughout the system. We clean the equipment, as well as other types of parking elements, as well as taking care of our pedestrian areas of snow and ice control. And then our security contract, we have both driven or car-related patrols as well as foot patrols across our system. This includes all our ramps and all our lots. We also coordinate with the Downtown 100 Court Watch and those elements in making downtown safe. We also have a control room where we're monitoring 1,300 cameras across the system. In that regards, We also have our push-button customer assist buttons, which we are routinely being used by our customers as well as getting tested. We get about 38,000 calls a year. About a third of those are security or safety related, I'll call it, and the other 2/3 are primarily customer questions that come to us day in and day out, or from one end of where's my car, I can't find it, to how do I go about getting carpooling or the like. So there's those elements out there. Overall, our package in this RFP is about a $22 million package based on 2013 dollars. Of that, only about 276 of it in 2013 was the management fee. The majority is a reimbursed direct operating expenses, and you can kind of see those components that are basically passed through the city as direct expenses reimbursed. There is no markup involved with those expenses, and so they've just handled that way. We are today serving about 6.5 million parkers in our system, and that's where we're at with the RFP. I did want to note, not on the slide presentation, but in the letter, we have taken this to the PRC that occurred last week, this week. Going this week, okay. So, and we'll have a review on that. I think there's a couple components that they'll be looking at. One of them that we've sought interest in the past is the effect of having our labor piece related to our security contract, and then we're requesting also that labor piece be granted with our valet services at the Hilton in that regards. Our proposed schedule to move forward with the RFP would be to get council approval to move forward, get it out on the street in December, review them basically in January, get contracts executed in February, such that we can begin an April 1 start date on this contract. So with that, Mr. Chair, those are my comments. If the community's got questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. Any questions per the presentation? See none, then I will move authorizing issuance of the RFP to solicit proposals for professional managerial and operation of the municipal park system, also known as MPLS parking. It's a new brand name. Any discussion on that item? See none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. Thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
Item 12, which is our last item, it's a discussion item regarding the 2014 regional solicitation for federal transportation funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve Hay is our transportation planner, will be making the presentation this morning. I'll just emphasize this is something we do on a regular basis. This is for the 2014 regional solicitation. I just also want to point out that these would be for funds available in 2018 and 2019, Steve. And so this is Public Works recommendation.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the regional solicitation that is currently on the streets. I've got a few slides that I will run through here. This is a program that's authorized in federal legislation, as known as MAP 21, or Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century. This is something that has been ongoing for a number of years through the different federal legislations that guides it. These funds are administered through MnDOT to the Met Council, and the whole process is administered through the Transportation Advisory Board process of the Metropolitan Council. As Steve mentioned, these funds were available for projects in 2018 and 2019 primarily, and approximately $150 million is available for the region. Okay. This process has historically been done every couple of years. It's actually been 3+ years since the last full regional solicitation, which was in 2011. At that time, the city submitted 11 project applications, and we were successful on 5 of those. So we were awarded funding for those 5 projects. Again, those would be projects for 2016 and 2017. One of the reasons, a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons why it's been 3 years since the last full solicitation is that the Met Council did an evaluation and kind of a completely revamped their process for the regional solicitation. And they changed a number of things, including the program categories that had historically been used from the federal legislation. And now the categories are modal-based, whereas before they really weren't. And there are 3 primary categories, as you can see here. Roadways being the major category, which now includes bridges. Bridges used to be its own category previously, and now it's been folded in with the roadway category. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities is the second main category, and then the third would be transit and travel demand management. And that category is a little more geared toward transit agencies, so all of the applications that we're proposing are going to be in the first 2 categories and not in the transit category. Just a little bit of information on the funding levels. In the top chart, you can see all the way to the right, the total of $150 million being available. Roughly 70 to 100 million of that is in the roadways category, 15 to 30 million in the bicycle and pedestrian category, and another 35 to 40 in transit. And they aren't hard, fast numbers because it gives the process a little flexibility to award funds to the strongest projects in each category. And then the second chart on this page just shows the minimum and maximum amounts that can be awarded. So $7 million is the maximum amount for the roadway and the bridge type projects. For multi-use trails, $5.5 million is the maximum amount, and then $1 million for pedestrian facilities and safe routes to school. And there are also minimum amounts listed here as well. You have to apply for at least that amount. And given the additional work of federalizing a project, we really don't want to apply for projects that don't meet those minimum thresholds, which isn't really a problem for us. A little bit quickly on the schedule. The solicitation came out in early October. The applications will be due to the Met Council December 1st. There'll be an initial qualifying review. That's just to make sure that the applications that are submitted meet the qualifying criteria, and we actually have one that's got some issues there, so I'll talk to that briefly. So that's just to make sure that you're eligible to be scored on your application. Mid-February of next year, we will have the scoring will be released for all the applications, and there is an appeal process built in, so that if we disagree or anybody disagrees with the scores that they've been awarded, there is a way to kind of appeal your scores and try to get some more points. So there's a fairly lengthy process then that the Met Council and the advisory board committees go through to develop options for which projects should get funded. Obviously, the highest ones, highest scoring projects get funded, but they also then make an attempt to spread the money around the region. Okay, so we're not going to get it all, unfortunately. And it's going to be, as it says here, mid-June by the time the Transportation Advisory Board makes its final recommendations for the funding. So we may have some idea earlier in the spring as to how we score, but it'll be mid-June before we know which projects have actually been selected for funding. So in determining which projects we wanted to apply for, we reached out not only within Public Works, but also to CPED, and we also went to our pedestrian and bicycle advisory committees to get input from them on what projects they thought might be worthy of submitting applications for. We considered, 39, really more than 40 projects were considered, and we did kind of an evaluation of trying to estimate how we thought they would score. Obviously, we wanted to put forward our best projects that we thought had the best chance of scoring well and being selected. So of those 39, we came up with 9 projects that we're proposing to move forward with and prepare the applications So those 9 are listed here. So we have 2 in the roadway reconstruction category, 8th Street South here in downtown, Broadway Northeast, 1 bridge project, the 10th Avenue Southeast bridge rehabilitation, 3 projects in the multi-use trail and bike facilities, the 40th Street pedestrian and bicycle bridge over 35W, a U of M protected bikeways project, what we're calling high quality connection between the Orange Line transit station and the Midtown Greenway. And we have 2 projects in the pedestrian facilities category, North Loop pedestrian improvements, and then Emerson and Fremont Avenues North pedestrian improvements. And additionally, we have 1 project in the safe routes to school category for high school transit connections. So this chart just shows the preliminary cost estimates that we have and how much money that we would be applying for and what the local match would be. And I didn't mention this previously, I'm sorry, but so these projects have a requirement of a 20% local match. So the projects are 80% federal money, and then we have to have the 20% local match. And so this just shows how much we anticipate applying for. As I said, these are kind of preliminary cost estimates. As we develop our applications over the coming weeks, we may put a finer point on some of these cost estimates. I specifically know with our U of M protected bikeways, it lists $1 million here, and I think that might be a bit high. As we develop that cost on that one might come down. The other ones I think will probably be pretty close to where they're at. Our roadway and bridge projects are clearly going to be requesting the maximum $7 million because they're quite expensive projects. I'll just briefly talk about each of the 9 projects that are on our list. So 8th Street South from Hennepin Avenue to Chicago Avenue is a roadway reconstruction project that is in our proposed 5-year CIP at this time. One of the main components of this project is to try to implement some wider sidewalks and enhanced transit facilities along 8th Street. This is part of a component that came out of our Access Minneapolis work to implement a transit spine, if you will, in the eastbound direction. So that's our proposal on 8th Street. Broadway Street Northeast, we are proposing there to reconstruct between Stinson Boulevard and Industrial Boulevard with the implementation of sidewalks. We have substantial sidewalk gaps along that corridor, and also possibly a multi-use trail on one side of the street. We're proposing to do basically a 4-to-3 conversion to go from a 4-lane roadway to a 3-lane roadway. In other words, 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane. And that would give us the space that we need then to implement the sidewalks and the trail. Our bridge project, the 10th Avenue Southeast Bridge. This project actually was awarded some funds in the last solicitation. And we are in the process right now, I believe, of turning back those funds because we only received about $3 million. And we think we have a good chance of securing the full $7 million. So this is the one I referred to as, if we didn't turn back those funds, then this would be deemed an ineligible project. So we need to make sure that we have those funds returned before we can move forward with getting that application scored. In our multi-use trails and bike facilities, we have the 40th Street pedestrian bridge over I-35W, part of the River Lake Greenway. There's an existing bridge there that is functionally obsolete and doesn't meet design standards. So we would like to improve that bridge, and it is also part of our CIP at this time. Our U of M Protected Bikeways project aims to implement protected bikeways leading both north and south of the university, actually to connect to University Avenue. So we'll be connecting from Riverside Avenue on the south side along 19th and then over the 10th Avenue Bridge to University Avenue. And then to the north, it would be along 15th Avenue Southeast, and alignment to be determined to get us up further to connect to the Northeast Diagonal Trail. And finally, the last one on this page is part of the Transit Access Project, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about. And the idea is to create a high-quality connection between the BRT station at Lake Street, the Orange Line, and the Midtown Greenway. Two projects in the pedestrian facilities category. The North Loop pedestrian improvements, we had a application in our last round in 2011 that we called Downtown Pedestrian Improvements, and that was a project that was funded. The idea was to implement pedestrian improvements, including ADA compliant curb ramps, enhanced crosswalks, pedestrian level street lighting and landscaping. And we plan to take that kind of toolkit of improvements and apply it to the North Loop neighborhood. And then the last one here on this list, Emerson and Fremont Avenues North, we are looking at, again, a variety of similar kinds of pedestrian improvements. The difference here is that we're trying to coordinate these improvements with the implementation of the arterial BRT D line, which we expect to be the third arterial BRT line implemented in the Twin Cities area. And the timing of this grant and the implementation of the arterial BRT line up very well, and we've coordinated this with Metro Transit, and we think this will be a very nice project. And finally, we're doing one Safe Routes to School application. This is for high school transit connections. Again, it's to implement a variety of pedestrian-related improvements for several high schools located throughout the Twin Cities area that are linked to transit lines. So I think, yeah, that's my final slide.
Thank you.
Take any questions?
Absolutely. Councilmember Glidden?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I did have a couple of questions, in part because I know that the Bicycle Advisory Committee had raised some questions about one project in particular that's on the list, and so I wanted just to have an opportunity for you to explain a little bit more. The project is a project that's actually in the 8th Ward, so I'm pretty familiar with it. It is the 40th Street pedestrian and bicycle bridge over I-35W. And as I understand the questions from the Bicycle Advisory Committee, they're kind of twofold. One is that this project has been submitted previously, and so why would this be competitive on the list if it wasn't competitive previously? I do know that Ms. Hager had responded to me that there had been some changes in the application to respond to the need for competitiveness, but I don't know what those changes are, so maybe you could enlighten us a little bit. The second, I think, part to the question was, should this project, the 40th Street bridge, be on the list above perhaps other projects that may address safety needs or other things? And I haven't gone and compared your list to what the Bicycle Advisory Committee had submitted as their thoughts on recommended projects. But so I think kind of the question is, is this really not only going to be competitive, but should it be on the list in terms of a great need for the city of Minneapolis, knowing we can only put so many projects on the list, and we want to be competitive as possible for the city of Minneapolis. So if you could, I think, elicit a little bit of the process on behalf of Public Works, that would maybe help us and myself understand some of the questions and responses from Public Works to the Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Council Member. So yeah, this project has previously been submitted to the regional solicitation process, and I don't know that I'd say it wasn't competitive. It actually scored fairly well. It just didn't quite make the cut to get funded. So it did score fairly well, and the scoring process and the scoring criteria have now been changed substantially from what they were in the past. So we think it may have a better chance now of making that cut and getting funded. We don't know that for sure, but we think that it is a competitive application, and we think that it does have a good chance of getting funded. So that's kind of the initial answer there. It is one we've talked a lot about, you know, within Public Works, and we still feel relatively strongly that it's a very worthwhile project to do. It kind of dovetails nicely with some of the other work going on 35W, and would give us a chance to maybe get that stretch of 35 kind of completed once the transit access work is implemented and underway. So we feel that it makes sense in that regard too. Obviously there's an existing bridge that right there now that does work, but it is substandard. There's a substandard clearance from the freeway level, and it's a substandard design for the bridge itself. So that's kind of an overview of why we think it's a worthwhile project. We did have discussions with the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I know they're not necessarily as enthusiastic about this project as maybe we are in Public Works, yet we felt that it was worthwhile moving forward.
So I'm not sure I've got the full answer to my question here. So I just want to make sure I do a little bit of follow-up. So one is, just so I understand, it's not that you change something about the application, it's that you think the scoring criteria is different and this will score more competitively? Or was there something more that you did to update the application to be more competitive?
Yes, the former, really. I mean, our application is going to be substantially the same. I mean, it's the same project that we're putting forward. It's the criteria and how they're scored that we think is going to be the big difference this time, and it should, we think, score better this time.
Okay. And then the other part to the question was, again, I don't have some comparison project to forward, but were there others that were presented that you weighed against this project? I just didn't hear that part to my question answered maybe as thoroughly as you did the original part about the evaluation around the 40th Street Bridge. Because I think the implication was that, yes, there's some merit to this project, but the bridge itself is not it's not a structure that's identified as in danger or structurally unsound. I guess that's what I would say. And so how does that compare to other projects that may have more of a safety rationale?
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. I'll try to answer that question. As I noted here, I mean, we did consider, you know, more than 20 different bicycle and pedestrian projects. Okay, so when we were trying to decide which ones to move forward with, we looked at all the ones that were suggested by the Bike and Ped Advisory Committees, as well as other projects, and tried to make an estimation of how we thought they would score. And in some cases, projects, we didn't move forward with a project because the timing might not have been right. We might have been something we wanted to implement sooner than 2018 and 2019, or it might have been a case where we didn't feel the project was quite ready for us to submit an application, that the project development hadn't proceeded far enough. So those are a couple of the reasons why that one was selected, and I'm not sure I'm getting to your...
Okay, well, that's helpful, and I will just say, because I did have some correspondence with Public Works, that was kind of part of the response that I had heard, that there were some readiness issues with some other projects or some timing issues, and I guess if that is the case, I'm not here to second guess your judgment. I think we're here to just ask questions. Do we have the best list possible? But if there are other ways that you think those projects that were identified by the Bicycle Advisory Committee would be moving forward, I just would ask perhaps that there is a response back to them about, and maybe there has been, about how these projects will move forward and will be able to accomplish them.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could perhaps maybe just follow up on Councilmember Glidden's question. I think the issue of timing is also maybe on the other side, that remembering that this is 2018 and 2019. So there are a number of projects that we would like to do something sooner than that, in 5 years. So that's another reason why perhaps some of these projects that were recommended from the Bicycle Advisory Committee in some other elected officials didn't make the list. Now, we, for example, with the bicycles, we have in the next 2 years, depending on the approval of the budget, protected bike lanes in the capital program. So those are dollars that would be available to potentially address some of these bicycle facility issues. The other thing I just want to also point out is when we evaluate this too, it's what we refer to as federalizing a project. We want to be careful that if the scope of the project is, the magnitude is such that it may not be beneficial for us to federalize the project, it may be more efficient for us to try to find other funds, particularly local funds, to address some of these needs. So I just want to indicate that that also played into the decision-making process.
Thank you. And I would just say that's a really helpful addition. So appreciated.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question about something that you considered and evaluated more than 39 possible applications, and you received input from these sources. I don't know what those other 30 projects were that fell off, and I appreciate your consideration of these, getting to these 9. But is there, do you know if on that longer list were there projects for station area enhancements for Minneapolis for the future Westlake Station, because the timing of this money, the timing of those projects would coincide?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember, none of the station area projects were part of these 39 projects.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Further questions? Well, I certainly appreciate the presentation and the Q&A. If there are no questions, I will move the item. Item 12, authorizing submittal of a series of applications for federal transportation funds through the Metropolitan Council's Regional Solicitation Program, and authorizing commitment of local funds per federal requirements to support the approved projects. This will be referred to Ways and Means. With that motion, any further discussion? Councilmember? No. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That item carries. We have concluded the agenda and are adjourned. Thank you.